Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. There's liberty. We introduced this song to you last week, and it has kind of a cool call and response part in the chorus. The men start out singing, "We know where the Spirit of the Lord is," and the women respond, "Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty." So it kind of goes like this. Let's do just that part, Emily. This is my daughter, Emily. I love having my daughter play with me. It goes like this. We know where the Spirit of the Lord is.
Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is a liberty.
We know, living in your freedom.
Living in your freedom, we see your glory.
We know where the Spirit of the Lord is.
Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is a liberty.
We're yours, and yours is the kingdom.
We're yours, yours is the kingdom.
So let's try it. Let's try that one more time now that you've heard it. And then we did it last week. So I'm going to we're teaching this to you. You're going to sing it back with us. All right, let's try it, shall we? Everyone know your part? Yes. Yeah? You nailed it? If you identify as a man today, then you sing with me. If you identify as a woman, you can... I'm not even being facetious, kind of, but not really. Okay. We know where the Spirit of the Lord
Where
is.
the Spirit of the Lord is, there is a liberty.
We know, living in your freedom.
Living in your freedom, we see your glory.
We know where the Spirit of the Lord
Where the
is.
Spirit of the Lord is, there is a
So
liberty.
good. We're yours, and yours is the kingdom.
We're yours, yours is the kingdom.
You're all that we need. We of the Lord
Where the
is.
Spirit of the Lord is, there is a liberty.
We know living in your freedom.
Living in your freedom, we see your glory.
We know where the Spirit of the Lord
Where the
is.
Spirit of the Lord is, there is a liberty.
We know yours is the kingdom.
Yours is the kingdom. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is a liberty. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is a
God, we are thankful for the truth that we experience in that song. That you really, truly do bring us freedom. Your Spirit is good and kind and loving and all-powerful. And you bring freedom to captives. And you help us to live into the truth. You help us to live as free people. Free to love, free to serve, free to be who we truly were created to be. We are grateful, God. Thank you. In the name of Jesus the Christ, we pray. Amen. Your love, oh Lord, reaches to the heavens. Your faithfulness take a minute and welcome everybody. Make sure that everyone here knows that they are loved and that they're welcome. Come back to your seats. We're going to take an offering. And this is obviously for people who call themselves or consider themselves questers. So this is a way to support what God is doing in this place. We really do rely on the generosity of our members and regular attenders to help keep this place running and doing what we feel God has called us to do. So if you can give, please give generously as God leads you. And if you're a visitor this morning, please just let it go by you. That's great. We're going to also dismiss kids to Kids Quest. They can follow Christine out. There's anyone here. And she's going to be heading over. And this song is one we've done several times, and I just think it's cool. And especially as I was watching everybody like hug each other and shake hands and welcome each other. It's called All Belong Here.
When you're not sure who you really are, when all you feel is the shape of your scars, and you have more wounds than you can count, open your eyes, look all around. You aren't alone, this is your home. Come and remember who you are here.
Today, along in a series of inviting guest speakers, we have with us today not only a very special speaker, but someone who was very instrumental in creating the whole quest as we know it. Phil and Mindy came out with Joe and Lynn Everly to be the youth ministers, the first directorship youth ministry of the quest. And they were here for, well, I'm going to get the dates and the times wrong, but something like 4, 5, 6 years before they branched off and created an organization called Be to Live. And it came out of a natural just kind of unfolding here for our youth ministry program that they created. And it grew beyond kind of the quest. And if you know anything about it, probably many of your kids have gone to Mexico on these trips over the years. It really became a ministry for all of Novato and then all of Marin. And a couple years back, well, what? It's a year ago, right? That you guys left? Yeah, so a year ago, Phil and Mindy left here with their 2 children, Caleb and Chloe, who used to be this size, and now they're getting up there. But they left to actually live down in La Misión, which is the area of Mexico that we would take the kids to on these field trips. And they moved down there, and they still are conducting these trips for high school and youth of all of Marin. And they're very populated trips, anywhere from 30 to 60 kids on each of these trips down there, where they work in the orphanages and the daycare down there. It's a beautiful process, and I was fortunate to go on quite a few of those trips, and it's just amazing what that does to the heart of our youth. So I'm not going to read, I was going to read, but I'm not going to read the bio that's in the program today. But do take a moment to read that, because it really gives you a little more insight into who they are. I want to say on a very personal note that Phil and Mindy were very, very instrumental in my own spiritual formation, and I honor them deeply. 2 people that are living a life of service and with a humility and a sense of belonging that we all long for. So, Phil, thanks for being here. You're welcome.
Well, good morning. It is good to be here. It is good to be back with you, friends. I see a number of familiar faces. Some of you have gone on these Mexico service trips that we do. Andrew Regis, Ken Bacon. I'm a little blinded up here. I can't see everyone who's here. But if you were on one of those trips, I know Scott Steiner. So our first trip, so let me back up. I got a little excited here. In 2003, my wife and I moved out here to California, to Novato. We had no idea what this Novato place was. Like most people who don't know Novato, we probably pronounce it Nevada. And landed here and started the youth ministry at the same time as we were starting the quest. And just one kind of funny episode in starting of this church, we were doing preview services. And we had a preview service, which means that we did like once a month. And we had a preview service at the Margaret Todd Center. If you want to get a reaction from like Scott, Susie Steinmetz, I'm not sure who else was there at the beginning, just mention, what about this preview service at Margaret Todd? It was the preview service that was one of those things, if anything could go wrong in a church service, went wrong. PowerPoint wasn't working, the sound was off, the band was just off. It was, afterwards we're like, we're not going to make it. This is just a disaster. But through the grace and mercy of God, we continued. So then in 2006, we did our first Mexico service trip to La Misión, Mexico. It's an hour south of the Tijuana, San Diego border. We had 19 high school students, 5 adults. Nancy Malone was on that trip, Scott Steinmetz, Judge Taylor, Patty Taylor, and then these 19 high school students. Huge success. Like, hey, this is fun. Let's do a family trip. We did a family trip in the fall. I think like Brian Heslop was on that trip and a few others. And it was like, hey, let's keep doing this. So in the spring, we did another trip in the spring. We had like 40 high school students. Like, where are these high school students coming from? And every year it continued to grow and to grow. And in 2009, we began to really feel God is saying, hey, I got something that I want you to do. And as we prayed about it, we really felt like God was saying, we want you to step out on faith and start this nonprofit, Be to Live. Now, how many of you remember 2008, 2009, and just the amazing economy we had just thriving, right? No. And we're like, all right, God, you serious right now? Because we hadn't fundraised or started any fundraising to support our family. At that time, we had Caleb and Chloe, young babies at that time. They weren't babies, but they were young. But we said, all right, God, we'll give this a ride. We're up for it. So we resigned from the Quest and started Be to Live in 2010. And every year, except for our second year of Be to Live, we weren't quite sure if we were going to make it. But then it continued to grow to the point this year, I think we have 10 Mexico trips with high school students. We have some college groups that are coming. We do adult and family trips with the whole idea of inspiring people to live into the life that God has called us to live into, which is really in relationship with Him, serving and loving others, and living in community. And for a week, we live intentionally that way. And just the idea of this is the life God designed us to live, I want more of it. And so how can we do that back home? And so, this year I think we'll have around 250 or so total people. We've recently started, within the last probably 4 years, work in Ghana, West Africa. We work with 2 organizations over there. One is IJM, International Justice Mission. Not necessarily work with them, but we visit their office. They rescue children from slavery off of Lake Volta. Lake Volta in Ghana is the largest man-made lake in the world. Around 12 to 14,000 children that live on the lake that are enslaved. And so IJM works with the local government to free these children. And then we spend most of our time with an organization called City of Refuge Ministries that does the aftercare of these children. And so we go spend time there building relationships with the children there, just doing whatever they need to be done. It's more of a service and education trip is what that is. And so, this is kind of a nutshell of who we are. And as Brian mentioned, it was a year ago today, May 20th, that we had packed our stuff and 6:30, 6 a.m. in the morning, tears in our eyes, driving out of here because this was our home. This was our kids' home for 13, 15 years. And with a heavy heart, but knowing this is the next chapter that God had for our lives, drove to La Misión, Mexico, where we host all of our Mexico trips. And so that's a little bit of who we are, our connection here, and just love you guys. And you guys have been supportive of us in various different ways, and we're just so grateful for that. We host our Spring Break Mexico meeting here, which I'm not sure. This is from a spring break trip. You may recognize some of the students. I think right here is Delaney. So these are all like Nevada high school students. There's a few Petaluma high school students in there too. This is overlooking the valley of La Misión there. So, and over the course of the year, I just need to plug this. DJ is a friend of mine who is the American director leader at the orphanage that we work at, wrote a book. That's what this is, reciprocal missions, short-term missions that serve everyone. And so I have a few copies in the back if you're so inclined or interested to know more about what we do, how we do things as a way of doing service that honors everyone involved. Because a lot of times service can come from a very paternalistic type. We have, you don't. We're going to give you or tell you what to do or how to do things. Whereas we believe the best service is reciprocal, that poverty takes on many forms. There's the physical poverty where it's like, hey, I have a lot of things. And there's also the physical poverty or the relational poverty or poverty that we have that we hide in our lives that we don't want other people to see. Well, we've discovered that a lot of times those who don't have the physical means are wealthy in so many things that I'm poor in. And we can learn from each other. We can grow from each other. There's this reciprocalness of giving and receiving. And so that's essentially what this book is about. And so we have some in the back if you are interested in that. So first of all, I want to have a little fun. I still work with high school students. But so just a little fun interactive game here. Okay, so we're going to talk about myths about Mexico. Living in Mexico, you really begin to realize the myths that a lot of Americans have about Mexico. So, let's go. Cinco de Mayo. Raise your hand if you think, I need to do a better job of phrasing these questions so it's not leading. Is Cinco de Mayo a national holiday in Mexico? True. It is not. Man, you guys are great. It is not a national holiday. And, you know, we were down there for Cinco de Mayo, and, you know, where we're at, it's not a big deal. But the small town in eastern mainland Mexico, Puebla, celebrates this holiday. And so, as you mentioned, you know, it was during the Civil War that the French were thinking, you know, they wanted to reinforce the southern states. And so they're like, hey, let's go through Mexico. And it was at the Battle of Mi Puebla where they met the Mexican military. The Mexican military did not have as much of the military reinforcements as the French did, but they defeated the French there. If it wasn't for Mexico, who knows how the Civil War would have gone. Another thing America should be grateful about for Mexico. That's a little leading too. Bad water. True or false? Can Mexicans drink the water out of the faucet? True. False. I've not met a Mexican that does not drink filtered water. There's no, bad water is bad water. You can't get used to bad water. Now, I know that, like, if you go to Europe, sometimes the water there is a little funky, but within Mexico, even every Mexican there drinks filtered water. So you can't get used to bad water. It's just something there that so if you go, don't drink the water there. I think it's well known. But if you go to a restaurant, a little insider information, if you go to a restaurant and they serve you water in a cup, and it's like a popular restaurant, so to speak, 95%, I'm not going to say 100%, it's filtered water, because if news gets out that they serve bad water there, they're done. So, just a little helpful. The Caesar salad, invented in Mexico. True or false? True? False? Caesar salad was invented in Tijuana, Mexico. True statement. So, about 1924, during the Prohibition in the United States, Tijuana was receiving a lot of people from Southern California to come, get their alcohol. And this restaurant is running out of food, and they had salad left. And this chef named Caesar threw together ingredients, made this dressing, and it became known as Caesar salad. So it's not from Italy, but I need to make sure my sources on this. But the chef, I think, was Italian. That might be your little connection there. So, but it was invented in Mexico. So was the colored TV. Another story. Hard shell tacos. Are hard shell tacos an American invention? True. Yes, it is from the United States. Any guess what popular restaurant invented this? It's still around? You got it. Taco Bell. So if you go to Mexico and you see hard shell tacos on the menu, they are catering to us, the Americans. So you're not going to find a taco shop that they have the tostados type thing, which is like the hard shell round things, but no. Speaking of tacos, let's be real. When living here, I thought, this is my own personal thing, and nobody's paid me for this, but Mi Pueblo, I thought, had the best burritos. Hacienda in town had the best tacos, but nothing compares to this. This is, you won't find this around here. It's called adobada. It is marinated pork. There's thinly layered pork. They put it on a skewer. It looks like a gyro, and they just shave it off. It is the best tacos. They put cilantro and guacamole, and it's tacos. All right. So if you ever go to Mexico, you want to look for this and or order yourself one of those. It is a little spicy. All of Mexico is dangerous. False. It is so this is the Tijuana beach, right here. And so you see this wall. That's the wall that separates the United States from Mexico. And so there is a wall, in case there's any questions about that. And it is safe. And just like any place you go, you just have to not make yourself a target, right? So you have to do some smart things about that, but not all of Mexico is in a drug war. And so if you were to treat the eastern part of the United States like we treat Mexico, with all of the things that are going on in Chicago, none of us would cross the Mississippi River because think all of the whole East Coast is in a drug war. There are definitely pockets where things like that are going on, but not all of Mexico is that way. So there's the wall that separates the two countries. Tijuana there is on your right, and the United States is on the left. There's actually, in this area, there are two walls. So you have this wall right here, which is a corrugated metal wall, and then you have this wall here that zigzags. This has like about 17-foot high barbed wire fence, infrared heating on the U.S. side. You have Border Patrol. In this area, there's a lot of helicopters that fly up and down this area. It's a very militarized border area. The interesting thing is that on the Mexico side of the wall, there, the Tijuana Playas, is that Mexicans have made this wall into an art piece. And so this wall is a triangle. So every one of those posts is a triangle. And on the Mexico side, it has the pointy side to it. And so very creatively, if you look one way down the wall, you'll see one picture. If you look the other way, you'll see a different picture. And we take students to this, we take adults to this, because it's important for us to humanize political or policy issues, because inevitably political issues have human ramifications. And a lot of times those ramifications fall onto those that are on the underside of life, those who are on the margins. Those are the ones that typically are the ones who suffer the most. And so just to humanize this, and so it's not uncommon on a Sunday afternoon to see families visiting between the two fences. On the U.S. side, you have one family, sometimes a husband or father, and the other side, you have a husband or father or a grandmother, and they're talking between the fence, almost as close as you can get. And the place that they can visit, I didn't put a picture up, is that they have this really thick barbed wire mesh. The only way you're able to touch is through pinkies. And so you put your pinky in between. And so you see families there on Sundays having these conversations. And one Sunday, we were there, and I assume, saw an older lady as close as she could get to that mesh fence with her husband on the other side of it, trying to kiss. And so, you have walls, wall like this. The other thing, just to draw your attention to, being May and being Memorial Day coming up and being grateful for our U.S. military. Does anyone know what an upside-down United States flag means? Distress. It's a sign of distress. It's not a disrespectful thing. So unbeknownst to a lot of people, nobody knows for sure, anywhere from 350 to 1,000 deported vets. They are people who have been in the United States legally. We met one man a few weeks ago named Miguel. And his story is that he came to the United States legally with his family. He was 7 to 8 years old, grew up in Chicago, enlisted into the military, did 2 tours in Iraq, got out and honorably discharged. And like a lot of our vets, suffered PTSD and did some things that he got arrested for, he takes full responsibility for, did time in prison, got out a few weeks later, was picked up by ICE without any trial, was deported into Mexico. And so with the United States flag, if you look one way, you see the flag. If you look the other way, you'll see names of deported vets that are on the post. So just a really fascinating place there. I could talk more about what happens there and what people are doing to, just one other quick thing. Every Sunday at 1 o'clock, they have a church service here on both sides of the wall at the same time. On the U.S. side, there's a guy at the cordless mic. The speaker's on the Mexico side, which is kind of it's funny to me. And they have a church service at the same time on both sides of the wall. And they share communion together. And essentially, they make the wall into the Lord's table. And they can't pass the elements between the wall, but they have communion at the same time. So just an interesting, if you ever want to come, we would love to host you. But talking about coming to America, I just want to, and then I'll get on to what I was going to share this morning. But recently maybe you've heard about the immigrant caravan, or this caravan that came from, there's like three countries. It's called the Triangle of Violence right now. So Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. And people are fleeing the drug violence and everything that's happening there. And there was a caravan of about 100 people that made their way through Mexico and came to the San Diego, Tijuana border. And we follow an organization that works along the border and said, hey, we are in need of sleeping bags and pillows, And so we just kind of stuffed our car at 8 o'clock on a Sunday night and bombed up to the border. And this was just a few pictures of these people that were just waiting to legally go through our system of claiming asylum status. And so, it's just, just something that we would be able to be there and observe and help out a little bit in some way. And I'm sure you guys now have a lot of questions, but if you want to ask questions afterwards, that'd be great. But this morning, I want to talk about this idea of being broken but not crushed. Given the things we just talked about with walls and with refugees and immigrants, it doesn't take much to realize that our world is broken. Something is just not right. Something is off. It seems like, to me, there's days where I think, hey, we're making progress. And there's other days where you're like, oh my goodness, what what is going on in this world? We even feel it within our own lives. We even feel it with our own hurts and pains that we have. And, in Genesis 1:27, it talks about how in the beginning, God created humankind. He created you and I. And we were fearfully and wonderfully made. And we were born in this world as a clay pot, so to speak. But something is just wrong with this world because, a few chapters later in Genesis 3, it talks about Adam and Eve and how evil and sin and brokenness entered our world. And the pot of our lives broke. It fell apart. And there's ways we experience this brokenness in our own lives. One is what people do to us. We could be just walking down the street, just as an illustration. And all of a sudden, an arrow comes out of nowhere. We did nothing. And someone does something in our lives, did nothing to deserve it, whether it's something that someone said, a broken relationship, and we get this wound and this hurt and this pain, and we feel this brokenness. Sometimes it's because of our own of things we've done to other people, that we've caused harm and wound to other people's lives, whether intentionally or unintentionally, whether it's out of spite or out of anger or out of resentment. And we feel the regret of that, like, I shouldn't have done that. Or have you ever started to say something, and as you're saying it, you're going, I want to take those words back right now. And it's just too late. And the third way, a lot of times, just through our own choices. Things we do, we go, I shouldn't have done that. And we feel that wound, that brokenness, like, why did I do that? And so we have this brokenness in our lives. And so as a result, we try to, gather this up and try to do a few things with this. One way is we try to get busy with life. And it's easy to do that around here, right? I mean, we can schedule our day from the time our feet hit the floor to the time our head hits the pillow at night. And we just we feel this pain, like, I'm just going to get busy. We just start running. And it's a way of kind of numbing it. But in those quiet moments, in the stillness of the evening as we're going to sleep, we begin to feel that pain again. Another way is that we self-medicate, whether drugs or alcohol or something along those lines, just to numb the pain for a little while. But what happens after that numbness goes away? We begin to feel that hurt and that pain again. A third way that we tend to deal with this is that we cover it up. We're like, okay, I'm just going to sweep this under the rug and kind of cover it up. It's not there. Now, if you're like me and you have kids, kids are a great revealer of your brokenness. Excuse me. A few weeks ago, despite what people say about us, Mindy and I are pretty screwed up. A few weeks ago, we were planning on going to church. And the thing about our church is it is Mexican and English, so it's translated into both, predominantly Mexicans. But it's unlike a Mexican church because they start on time. I'm like, what is going on here? Because for most of Mexicans, time is a circle. You don't start till everyone's there. It's like, hey, we're going to start at 10 o'clock, and it's not until hey, everybody's here. It's 10:30. Let's start. They start at 10 o'clock. And it's a small church, and so it's full every morning. And if you show up late, guess where the empty seats are? Up front. Or if they're off to the side, there's like 1 inch in, and they walk you in front of everyone, and they sit you over there. And we had been late a few times already, and we're like, we cannot do this anymore. Everybody knows we're late. Everybody knows who we are. We're coming in late again. There's those Steiners. And so we decided we are not being late today. And so in the chaos of our morning, I'm sure there were voices raised at children, maybe yelled a little bit. There's weeping and gnashing of teeth. There's like, why are your shoes not on? Why is this? And it's like, don't tell me you've never experienced that before, right? And you get in the car, there's crying, and there's like, we're going to church to love Jesus today. and you show up at church, and you shut the door, and you're like, oh, your socks don't even match. What do you oh, my shirt's not untucked yet. It's like, and you show up, and you walk in the door, and like, how's your morning? It's great. Beautiful morning, isn't it? Right? And we fake it. We cover it up. Now, obviously, there are appropriate times to kind of go, hey, I'm hurting today. But where do we do that? Where do we allow ourselves the vulnerability to go, hey, I'm hurting. But instead, we just cover it up, put on a smiley face, and we just gut it out. The other thing we do is that we realize this, and so we start running in a direction that we hope puts us back together. Whether it's self-help books, whether if we just do these things, if I just run this way, if I just kind of figure all of this out, then it's up to me. I got to figure this out. We start running in a direction that after running for a while, like, man, nothing's really working. Is there hope? Is there hope for the wounds and the brokenness in our lives? I want to tell you this morning, yes, there is. There is a way forward through the hurts and the pains of our world and of our lives. There's a great verse in 2 Corinthians 4, 7 through 9. It says, but we have this treasure in jars of clay. So we are these jars of clay. And Paul's telling us, you have this treasure in you. This all-surpassing power that is from God, not from us. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed. How many of you this morning feel as though you're hard-pressed? You're perplexed. You're in despair. You're feeling struck down. You feel like this pot this morning, like, oh my gosh. There's a story of a man in John 5. Can you read that? Yeah. Of someone who was looking in the wrong direction. I had my mark. I'll just read it up there. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem, by the sheep gate, a pool, in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and the paralyzed. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, do you want to be healed? The sick man answered him, sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. And while I'm going, another steps down before me. Jesus said, get up, take up your bed, and walk. And at once the man was healed. He took up his bed and he walked. So this pool of Bethesda, it was believed that during the time that that an angel would come down and would stir this pool, and whoever the first person would be in to touch the water would be healed. Now, there's no evidence that this really ever happened, but there were these people that believed that this was how they could get healed. It would bubble up and people would run to get into the water. People would have help to get into the water. So this whole man's focus is like, I need to get there. This is where he was running. We talk about things that we chase to try to put ourselves together. This is what he saw. And the hope that, and the good news I have for you this morning is that it's not a thing. It's a person. It's the person that's standing right next to us. Because Jesus says, it's an interesting conversation. He says, do you want to be healed? And what's the man's response? I can't get into the water. Nobody's here to help me. If Jesus were to ask you this morning, do you want to be healed? What's your excuse? I can't. And Jesus wants to say, I can. There's another story, Matthew 19. I'm going to read this. About a rich young ruler. Just then a man came up to Jesus and asked, teacher, what good thing must I do to get eternal life? Interesting. What good thing? What do I need to do? Why do you ask me about what is good? Jesus replied. There's only one who is good. If you want to enter life, keep the commandments. The young ruler says, which ones? He inquired. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not give false testimony, honor your father and mother, and love your neighbor as yourself. This idea of doing good things. If you do these good things, Jesus is leading him here. And the man says, I've done all of these things. And the rich young ruler says, what do I still lack? He realized, I'm doing all of these things. I'm still missing something. If he didn't feel like he was missing something, he wouldn't be talking to Jesus. He'd say, I'm still missing something. I love Jesus' response. He says, if you want to be perfect, the word here is not necessarily perfect, but if you want to be whole again, if you want to be to be healed again. Sell your possessions, give it to the poor. You'll have treasures in heaven, and then come follow me. Jesus says if you want to be healed again, this is a pot that's broken. It has, it's been super glued back together. As great examples I could get. He says, if you want to be healed again, sell everything you have, give it to the poor, come follow me. But what does this rich young ruler have left if he sells everything he has? His car is how he didn't have a car. His horse, his house, everything. He sells everything, gives it to the poor. What does he have left? Nothing. He has himself, but that doesn't get him very far. He has Jesus. He says, come follow me. It's a person for our healing. And yes, in this side of life, in this side of death, when we allow Jesus to heal us, we're going to look like a cracked pot. Not a cracked pot, but a cracked pot. And we're still going to have the scars. And we all have scars physically. I'm sure we all have like those things that, our skin doesn't completely heal. We have these scars, but Jesus says, it's about following me. You follow me, you can become whole again. So often we make excuses, or we get running in a certain direction, or we self-medicate. And Jesus says, I'm right here. I can make you whole again. Now I want to address two myths about life in God. And I think it's important for us to address these. Myth number one, and people are going to have different opinions, but I want to stay with me here. Everything that happens to you in this world has a reason. When hard things happen in our lives and we don't know what to do with it, we go, God must have a reason. Does he? Like I mentioned earlier, there are 12,000 to 14,000 children enslaved in Lake Volta. They say that there's approximately 28 million people that are still enslaved today, which is crazy. Does God have a reason for people being in slavery? I don't think so. In other words, does God cause that so that they can learn something? Does God cause cancer in people's lives so that you learn something? What about the person who's suffering the cancer that doesn't get healed? We all have friends like that. My good friend coached basketball at San Marin for 12 years. My good friend Craig Pitty, who's the head basketball coach there, passed away this last year from cancer. I believe that there are things in this world that are just evil, that were never part of God's plan, and they don't belong here. There are injustices in this world that are happening that we go, that is not right. Because if they were part of God's plan, then why are we serving? Why are we helping people that are in need? Why are we trying to rescue children from slavery? Why? Because it's not right. It doesn't belong here. And it's good for us to weep and to mourn. There's a story of Jesus attending a funeral. His good friend Lazarus has passed away. And Jesus had intentionally delayed himself coming to see Lazarus while he was still alive and sick. But Jesus arrives and encounters Mary and Martha. And here's their conversation. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. And Jesus wept. I want to highlight deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Some translations will say he was indignant. He was angry. He was pissed. He's like, so I'm like, so what is he angry about? Why is he's at a funeral? Is he angry at Mary and Martha? Like, what's the big deal here? I believe that he is angry because he goes, this is not the world that he intended. If you remember Genesis 1, where we started at, where he made the world and said, this is good. There was no death. There was no dying. There was no evil. Adam and Eve and him had a perfect relationship where they could hear each other, they could talk to each other. And there's none of what we're experiencing today. And I believe that Jesus is angry. This is not what it's supposed to be. And then he weeps with them. I believe the things that happen in our life, there's things that happen that are not from God. But because God is loving and he's good, he can take these wounds that are not caused from him and still make us whole again. He can still make something beautiful out of the pain we suffer that maybe wasn't from him. But he goes, I'm a good and loving God. I can make you whole again. Though not everything is intended by God, he can still make something beautiful out of it. I think that gives us hope. The second myth, God will only give you what you can handle. This is a hard one. You guys laugh. Because we know it's true. We go, no, we know that this is not true. Have you ever gone through things in your life like, God, I can't do this anymore. This is beyond what I can handle. There's a story in Mark 4:35 through 41. Jesus and the disciples get into a boat. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, let's go over to the other side, leaving the crowd behind. They took him along just as he was in the boat. Took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. Jesus. The disciples woke him up and said to him, Teacher, don't you care if we're going to drown? 12 disciples in the boat. We know at least 3 of them were fishermen, Peter, James, and John. There may have been a few others. They're fishermen. They've been around the boat. Chances are they've been in a few storms before. They had gotten into a storm. They had nothing left. There's nothing they could do any further. And they thought, this is it. We're all going to die. And Jesus is sleeping in the boat. And they really thought, this is it. God had taken them further than they could do anything anymore. They had nothing left. And guess who's in the boat with them? Jesus, the very person who can make us whole again. So often I look past Jesus. I just get running. Oh, if I can just do this, and I can just try and put myself back together. All the time, Jesus is walking with me through that pain, through that heartache. That funeral that Jesus was at, he wept with them. He hurt with them. When we go through these painful things that happen in our lives, God feels that too. He hurts with you. He cries with you. Those nights alone, weeping, he's next to you, crying with you. He goes, I know. I'm with you. We'll get through this. This is not the end. Oh, another important part of this. So they wake Jesus up, right? He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, quiet, be still. And the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to the disciples, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? They were terrified and asked each other, who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. I believe that when we allow ourselves to get pushed beyond what we can handle, when we turn to Jesus, best prayer sometimes you can just say is just, help. I don't even have words anymore. Help. That we will experience God in a way we've never experienced him before. But we have this treasure in us, jars of clay, to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. He will get you through it. Yes, there will be pain. Yes, there'll still be tears. But he doesn't leave you. He doesn't say, hey, good luck with that. I'll be back in a little bit. Japan has this art that I think is beautiful and amazing. I'm not going to say this right, but it's kintsugi. Someone maybe say it better than me. But it's kintsugi is interpreted gold bonding, not bonding, gold joining. And they believe like having the pot that is cracked being put back together with gold is more beautiful than a pot that's not. And it's the cracks that is what is beautiful. If you're like me, we got plenty of cracks. And God wants to make us whole again. And the gold that he puts over it as he heals us are stories we get to tell of where we say, this was happening, but Jesus came through. And that's the gold. The scar is gold because Jesus came through. We begin to have stories of what God has done in our lives, even though something happened to us and we didn't deserve it and it happened. Or there's things that we've done, like, oh, there's regret. We have a story of God's redemption of making things right. Because God is about making things right in this world, even in the chaos of what we're living today. Because that's who he is. He's a redeemer. We can have stories of our lives to say, this was going on, but Jesus was in the boat with me the whole time. And he got me through it. Because this happened and this happened. And there's this dance of us joining him in the dance of redemption. What I love about that story with Jesus in the boat, there were other boats out there too, in the water with him. They all probably thought, we're all going to die. And Jesus stills the water. Psalm 34:18. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. I love that. So wherever you're at this morning, whatever those wounds are that you're carrying, I know as a church you're carrying some today. God has not forgotten you. He's not even left you. There's nothing we can do except to turn to him and say, help, I'm here. I want to be whole again. We're going to close with this song. Well, I'll get to the song in a moment. You guys can come up. So how do we get through this? Remember whose you are. You are God's. Love that song that we sang for the offertory. You belong to him. You are welcomed here with all of your mess ups, your screw ups. He's not left you. He says, you're mine. Surrender. Sell everything. I mean, sell out. All right, God, I got nothing except you. And that's all I need. It's a surrender. Lead me through this. And it goes through the relationship as Jesus called that rich young ruler, follow me. Yeah, the road's not easy, but it's beautiful. Yeah, there will be some twists and turns, and there will be hardships, but the person of Jesus is with you. And do it with community. We were never meant to live this life alone. Do it with others you can be vulnerable with. Go, hey, I got this wound, and this thing hurts. I need you to pray for me. And find places to serve, to give. The orphanage we work with in Mexico, there are these kids that are there that have been thrown away, abandoned at hospitals, on the streets, been abused. If anyone has this victim mentality, like, they owe me, it's them. They found the best way of healing, one of the best ways, is by turning your eyes on someone else and realizing even with your brokenness, you still have a purpose. You still have a way of serving others. And it brings healing. The song that they're going to sing, it's called Beautifully Broken. This is the chorus, and I find myself singing the chorus. It's a beautiful song. Every tear, every doubt, every time you've fallen down, when you're hurting, feeling shame, when you're numbing all your pain, when you're lost, when you've lost your way, and feel so far away, you're not. You're beautifully broken, and you can be whole again. Even 1,000,000 scars doesn't change whose you are. You're worthy. Beautifully broken.
Every scene, every doubt, every time you fall down. When you're hurt, feeling shame, when you're numbing all your pain.
boat with you. Know that the person of Jesus is standing next to you, saying, I can make you whole again. May the grace and love of Jesus overflow in your lives, that you will experience him in new and amazing ways, and that you will be whole again. Thank you, Jesus, for this morning. God, thank you for this church. Thank you for these people. Thank you that we are yours and we belong to you. God, I pray that through the darkness, through the tears, that we would turn to you and say, I got nothing, God. Make me whole again. God, I pray for those wounds this morning. I pray that you would touch them and you would heal them. You would bring redemption and fullness of life. In Jesus' name, amen. You're dismissed. Thank you.